Hi there, this is Walter, and welcome to my Altenew Educator Certification Program Level 2 video blog. The purpose of this is to walk you through my challenge for Level 2, which is to create 4 masculine cards and to also then create a project using an upcycled item. Upcycled meaning something that you already have, that you can use and turn into something else. Think about it as being like recycled, but then have something like jazzy added to it. And so we're going to get started, and I'm going to take you through my creative process of each of the 4 cards first. And the first card we're going to do is going to be a really cool congratulations masculine card. And it's going to have a really nice cityscape included on it. And what we're going to use is a standard A2 sized card base. I decided to go with black. Then, in order to have the white card part centered all around, I cut a piece of watercolor paper down to 5 inches by 3 3/4, and that will fit nicely centered with a 1/4 inch around each side. We're going to use the Altenew City Scene Building Stencil. We're going to use both sides of it. And we're going to use the Congratulations sentiment stamp from the Arabesque Medallion set. This is probably my favorite congratulations stamp that I have. I use it quite often. I just love the writing on it, and it is perfect for a card panel this size where it could be centered. And we're going to do something more than just stamp that. We're going to do it using some clear embossing ink and some embossing powder. So we're going, and also for the watercolored background, I am going to use the Altenew Indigo Skies Fresh Dye Ink, and we're going to watercolor with the ink. So let's get started with creating our background. Watercoloring is a really fun way to use your inks in a different way. And in order to watercolor, I'm using this painting board, and I'm going to smush my ink on there. And this card, it's going to be nighttime. So we definitely, a darker blue like Indigo Skies is going to be perfect. We're going to spritz some water on there. Then we're going to spritz the watercolor paper. That's known as the wet on wet method. And let's get some ink on here. And we're just going to start. It's okay that that's splattered because you're going to be painting over it anyways. So we're going to start by just doing some nice even watercolor strokes across the paper. Now right now the gradient is going from a darker to light because of how I started. But that's going to change because I actually want the darker down below for when I stencil the building, the background set of buildings on there. It would at night be darker in between the buildings than it would higher up in the sky. So, and this is a great blue ink for doing a nighttime sky. It's a nice dark ink, so it's not going to take a ton to get it to where you want it to be. I'm going to come back down here again. And this getting on the back of the cardstock of the watercolor paper is not going to matter, so don't worry about that. But just do some nice even strokes all across the cardstock. I keep calling it cardstock. The watercolor paper until you get the desired effect that you're looking for. And I want to even that out a bit, so I'm going to focus more down here. And I'm already liking it. It's looking really good. I think we're going to be close to having this watercolored and ready to dry so that we can move on to do some stenciling, some heat embossing, some really fun techniques to create what I think is going to be an awesome congratulation card that you'd be proud to give to any guy in your life. I think I am going to go just a tad darker now. So I'm going to add just a little bit more ink. I'm not going to add quite as much water this time because this is really going to just be to darken up some spaces. Get that loaded onto my brush, and I'm going to come down. There we go. That is what I am looking for. And then as you move it up, it'll just become a little bit more gradient. And we're going to do something else with the sky too, so it's not going to be left plain anyway. But let's get some more dark there. There. I'm liking that. That looks good. Okay, I am going to let that dry and we'll move on to the next step. My watercolor paper is now dry. We have that nice rich blue nighttime sky. And the next thing I want to do is add some shimmer into that nighttime sky. But I want to not add it to the whole panel because I know I'm going to be putting some buildings on there and I don't want to be putting some buildings over the shimmer. And there's a couple of ways that you can do this. I could easily just do some to give that star effect, I could use some white ink, liquid ink, and just go ahead and splatter it. I could add some white ink onto a board, spray it with water, and use a paintbrush to adhere some white spots on there. But I have another little tool in my crafting arsenal from Altenew, and it is a iridescent shimmery spray. And so you just gotta shake it up because a lot of that kind of clumps up at the bottom when you're not using it. So you shake it up to distribute it. I put my watercolor sheet into a box, part of a box that I use for spraying inks. As you can see, it's used quite a bit. And then I'm using a scrap piece of paper. This actually happens to be chipboard, but you can use paper. It doesn't have to be chipboard. I just happened to have that close by and I grabbed it. And what I want to do is at about somewhere between a third way up from the bottom and a halfway up, I want to put the chipboard or the paper there so that I don't get this down the bottom. And then I just want to go ahead and spray. And this will give a really cool effect, especially if you just kind of tap it too. You kind of get those stars there. So we're going to let that dry, and I'll be back to show you how it looks. Okay, that's now dry, and you can see what a difference that iridescent spray makes. I really like that, and I do like it better than just plain white ink because it adds that shimmer. And who maybe in your world this is a winter sky, in which case that can look more like snow. Perhaps it's just a shimmery night overall in the sky. And, it's really your preference and what you think the person that you're giving this to will like. So I think that looks good now. So we're going to move on to doing the next step, which is to create the cityscape. And there's a couple of things that I'm going to do. Take the stencil out to illustrate it for you. So I want to use this in the background, and I want it to be up a little bit higher. And then I'm also going to use this one that I want to be a little bit lower. And this one, I'm actually going to stencil onto another piece of paper and then add it onto the front of the card with some double-sided tape to give it more dimension. So we'll start with this one first, and I'm going to go ahead and get some ink, and I am going to put that one on first. So let me grab that ink and I'll show you how I'm going to do it. Okay, so I have my paper and my stencil adhered down onto a board I'm going to use. I'm just using Post-it tape just to make it easy. I'm using some black ink, Versifying Clear black ink, and I'm just going to go ahead and stencil in that city line. And so I'm going to start down this end, and it's going to take, you know, quite a bit of black to get it to where we want it, since we have the blue there. But, you know, it doesn't have to be pitch black either. What we want to do is give the illusion that the city line is there in the distance, because we're going to have the main focus be on the one that we're putting up front, that's actually going to be adhered down with double-sided foam tape, so that there's some dimension there, and it looks like this is in the background and the other's in the forefront. So we'll get this ink on there, and I just want to get a coat here, because then I'll show you there's something else we can do to help with getting it darker if we'd like to. So we'll see how this looks and if we're happy with it or not. And this was the reason why I didn't want to have that iridescence coming all the ways down. I knew I'd have to go over it a bit with some black ink for the upper part of the skyline, but I didn't want to have to do the whole card. But it covers up, and we're getting what we, you know, the result we want here. So I'm going to continue on with this, and I will be back to show you when I'm ready for the next step. Okay, I have finished going over it with the black ink. I like where it's at. And another thing I did is I took a black alcohol ink marker, and I just went along the stencil just to help add that definition in. So let's take our stencil away. There we go. A nice dark cityscape against that blue sky. I love it. And now we're going to add even more layer and depth into it. So next up is going to be creating the part of the cityscape that will be up in the front. Okay, I am ready for the next step. What I'm going to do is use the other piece of the watercolor paper that I hadn't used. It's nice and sturdy. And I'm going to put some baking powder down on it, and this is going to act as an anti-static agent to make sure that when we put the embossing powder down on the paper, that you get far less, maybe not any, stray pieces of the embossing powder staying on your paper. So just brush it around. You know, I can't see buying anti-static powder when this works, and you can buy a big can for much cheaper. So just brush that on, knock that off, and I can pick it up and just gently tap that. We're done with that. Move that to the side. Now what I want to do is I have the stencil, the other side of the stencil, already taped down, and I want to put this paper underneath. But before doing the next step, I want to line it up so I'm getting everything where I want it to be. And I want to show you that here is the card panel that we've already worked on. And I'm going to line that up with this just to show that I want the front part of the cityscape to come up, but not all the way and cover everything in the back. And so I want to just compare to make sure that I'm happy with where that will go. And I think that will be fine, right about there. So I like that placement. Now, this is going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to take my clear embossing ink pad and just press it down. Move it around to get the coverage around that stencil onto the onto the paper, doing it just a few times to make sure that I have a good amount on there. And you know what? I'm going to do it just maybe a couple more times for good measure. I'd rather be safe than sorry. Now we're going to move that, and I can see that it's on there. So we'll move this to the side. Now I'm going to take my embossing powder and get it on there, cover up the ink, and I'm going to do this front section in silver. I think that will look really nice. So I'm taking some silver embossing powder, and I'm just going to sprinkle it all over. Pick this up and knock that off. There, perfect. And as you can see, no strays up at the top. I like the way that looks. I'm just going to put a little bit more there. I thought it needed just a tad more, but I really like that. I think that looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and use my heat tool to get that set and ready to be able to cut out. Little tip, I usually use a paper towel for this because then all you do is create a little funnel. Make sure that it's a small opening down there, and you can just add that unused embossing powder right back in. I know everyone does it. It's nothing special that just I do, but just thought I'd share in case maybe you do it a different way. So I actually have my heat tool set up in this nice little caddy that also comes with a paddle and a clip so that you don't have to, you don't risk burning yourself. So turning on the heat tool, let that warm up for just a few seconds. And then go right in and slide that under. And you can see the color changing. Move that along. I think this color versus the blue background and the black buildings in the back is going to be really nice. And we're going to tie it in as well afterwards because I'm going to use the same silver for heat embossing the congratulations onto the card panel as well. So that's the last little bit. I'm just going to go over one last time, make sure everything, that looks good. And so that is done. The next thing, now that that is set, is I'm going to fussy cut that out. And once I'm done with that, I'll show you how I'm going to place it onto the card panel. Okay, I have that fussy cut out, and here's a little tip for you. It's not extremely noticeable, but you might have a little bit of white there after fussy cutting it out. If you have any kind of like a metallic silver or dark marker, go ahead and run that along the side. Not only does it help cover up the white, but it also helps further define the shape. And if you have a section that might be a little too narrow for one side, generally there's two sides to those markers. Get the smaller of the two. And just get down in there. And if you happen to go over something by mistake, if you wipe it right away, you'll be okay. So we know that for these deeper crevices, we need to use this end. So let's just go along there. And it's all about, little ways that you can just not only cover things up, but also just add. When you're looking for layering and you're looking for depth in a card, even just a simple line on the horizon can help out and give you that look that you're going for. There. get down there. And you can see I had a stray mark, but it came right off. There we go. Get this side. And again, this is not something you absolutely have to do. It's something I like to do because if I have that little white around there, if I can cover it up, I figure I may as well. It just shows that you put in that time, and those attention to those little details can really be what sets your work apart from someone else's. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is that you're satisfied and happy with what you're putting forward, whether, you know, it be to someone special or even someone you don't know. Share some kindness and you'll see them smile. So there, we have that done now. Let's put those caps back on so we don't lose them. That one goes there, that one goes there. Okay, so grab our card panel, and we're going to want that to go and sit right down at the base of that card panel. But we're going to use some double-sided tape to adhere it down. And again, that's just going to give it just a little bit more depth. So I'm going to grab my double-sided tape strips now and get that. Okay, so I have the double-sided tape put onto our cityscape background, and I set it to the side. I did not peel the back off yet, but you can see I have really good coverage there. But I like that extra coverage because let's say I didn't put any up here, that piece could start to you know, bend away, but at least with the tape, it's going to be secured down there. So put that to the side. I'm now going to take my card panel, and I want to take my brush that I use only for getting the cornstarch on there and get some onto the brush. And I want the sentiment of congratulations to go over here. So I'm just going to brush some of this cornstarch over here for when I get the embossing powder on there. I'm just going to pick it up and brush it on. Don't worry about getting it on the black of the building because it's just, I keep calling it cornstarch. It's baking powder, but cornstarch would work as well. Same thing. It acts, you could use baby powder, any of those. It acts as that anti-static agent for you to make sure that that you're not going to have any of that sticking around. And now I'm going to go ahead and get ready to get the embossing powder on there. I'm grabbing my piece of paper towel from before. And for this, before I use that paper towel, I'm going to grab my stamping platform and let's get the sentiment on there. So move those out of the way. I'm going to hold it down with just one there. And we'll put a magnet over here. Let me grab that sentiment. And it's the right size for what we need too. So that's going to be perfect. I just want it right up here in the sky. I like that alignment. That looks good. So go ahead and grab the stamp. Oh, I'm on the rubber side actually. So let's move that around so that we know we're going to get a really good stamp on there. So we'll position that again. There we go. And now it'll work. There we go. Get our clear embossing ink on there. Get some good coverage, so I'll stamp it a few times. Get that covered. And press that down. As we pick it up, we'll be able to see, did we get it? I believe we did. But just to be on the safe side, I'm all about safeguarding and doing things hopefully just once, not twice. Put a little bit more on there, stick it down, and by now it should be on there. So we'll move that, and let's get our embossing powder. Sprinkle that on. And it looks light right now, but you don't have to worry about it. It is going to darken up once it's heat set. I think we got pretty good coverage there. And I like that it's going to match the same silver as down below in the buildings. That looks good. So I'm going to go ahead and heat set that and be back to finish the side. Okay, that looks really nice. I like that. Next, going to go ahead and get our double-sided backing off of that tape and then adhere it down. So I'm not going to bore you with peeling the backing off, so I'll be right back. Okay, all of that backing is peeled off. The great thing is by using the other piece of the watercolor paper, I know that the width is the same. And so all I'm going to do is line up this down at the bottom edge. And before pressing down, I like where that is. Then I can start to press it down. And it's right up against the sides. And I really like that. I like the contrast of the brightness in the front against the darkness in the back. We have that beautiful sky. With some shimmer to it, and then we have the congratulations in the matching shade of embossed silver. The last thing we need to do now is go ahead and get this card panel onto our card base, and that is really easy. I'm just going to use double-sided tape. I'm going to center it. And that is the first card for my level 2 challenge, a masculine congratulations card. Thanks for watching. See you at the next for the next card.